Let's take a look at your intake process and how forms will help you move from work administration to work management. Here, we're going to cover how to manage your intake process, and the best practice for doing so is to use a form. If you're looking for instructions on how to create a form, be sure to check out the Help Center articles. Previously, your intake process may have looked like going to meetings, and then there might have been some brainstorming, and the idea is under your departments, so you transcribe all of the thoughts from that meeting and then later convert that into a task in ClickUp. Instead of shouldering all of that administrative work, you can push that whole process into a form. This way, you shift from administration of work to the management of work. You'll want to use your custom fields to capture all of the information you need to gather as a part of that intake process. And then you use those custom fields to manage things like project acceptance and oversight. Let's start by going to our intake list and adding a form. By the way, if you aren't doing so, consider creating a separate list for your intake process. It creates a nice separation and makes it much easier to manage new and incoming work versus the work that's already in progress. Also, I just wanted to call out here that where you place the form is important, because wherever you place that form, that's where the tasks are going to land by default when it's submitted. If you later decide you want to change the form location, as of this video, you won't be able to move it. So be sure you set that form up in the right place. Next, let's talk a little bit about custom fields. Once your form has been added, it's time to add your custom fields. I'm not going to go into too much detail over custom fields here, but I will say that the first ones you experiment with are probably going to be dropdowns and labels. Dropdown custom fields allow you to select one option from a list, similar to picking a category. Label custom fields are like multiple choice, where you can select more than one option simultaneously. You can see in this list, I'm currently using dropdowns to capture things like content type and the initiative, while I'm using label fields to capture the channel. Here you can see, because I've got my custom fields set up on my list, I can easily add them to the form for the submitter to update. So again, I no longer need to shoulder this work. I simply evaluate it once it's submitted. And one final call out here with your custom fields. Because this form is stakeholder facing, you can choose the fields you want submitters to use while using separate custom fields in the actual intake list for your own management of the workflow. One example of this might be the assignee. I don't necessarily want to give the form submitter control over who the assignee will be on the task, but once that task is submitted to me, as a part of my process, I might set up who the assignee is before I send it to them to deliver on. I'm going to end here with a couple of tips and tricks. First, take advantage of the form link. Use this link to make the form easily accessible. This might be by pinning it to the channel your team uses in Slack, linking it on your team's landing page, or hosting it on a website if you're using it for external stakeholders. Also, don't forget we've got conditional logic now available in forms. Conditional logic allows for branching within your forms. This will also allow you to gather details on multiple types of projects or for different types of stakeholders. Now that you've got your intake process mastered, let's move on to increasing your efficiency with automations. We've also got some practice exercises at the end of this course you can use to start working with forms right away.